You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thank you for joining us as we have a battle of the cats this weekend in Carolina. Are we feeling better? Are we thinking that maybe it's not the end of the world? It's certainly not good, but there is still hope out there. We're going to dive into that in a minute. We're going to dive into quite a few things today as the 0-3 Cincinnati Bengals go to take on Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers at 1-2. Charlotte, by the way, getting hammered by this hurricane, or the remnants of it anyways, that are coming up. So hopefully everyone there is doing fine. Probably going to be a soggy game on Sunday. But if that is the biggest consequence that the people in North Carolina have to deal with, certainly no worries there, as a lot of folks down south going through that right now. We wish them all the best. However, we really need their football team to come out and not play very well on Sunday. We'll get to all that. We got a battle of the cats. We're going to dive into some Band-Aids for the defense, which they need that and then some. But right now, just patching things up. We'll give you, I got a bet I really like this week. We'll get into quite a few things here, but I want to start, and I promise I'm not going to talk about this a ton, but I want to start with the playoff numbers. Because that's what, we know what the expectations were coming into the season, right? We know that this was like playoffs were the minimum. Winning a playoff game is probably the minimum. Probably if the Bengals were to get in and only won one game, you would kind of shrug your shoulders at the season. And it's great that the bar is that high now, but it also sets a standard that makes starts like this one really damper what could be an otherwise awesome season. So we'll get into that, and let's start with that. Let's start with some numbers, because we want to know, right? We want to know, should we be still thinking about what could be in January? And I did record the last podcast directly after the game on Monday night. Probably won't do that again. Went back and listened. Probably not in my clearest state of mind. No, I wasn't drinking or anything. Just, you've got all these thoughts running through your head, and is it good to let them out? Yes, but probably on the phone with a friend rather than on a podcast that goes out to as many people as would like to hear it. So let's get these playoff numbers out of the way. I looked last year. Kevin Patra of NFL.com had some fun numbers. Since 1990, 235 NFL teams have started 1-3. The Bengals have the opportunity to do that on Sunday, obviously. So since 1990, there have been 235 teams in the NFL to start 1-3. 34 of those teams have gone on to make the playoffs. That's about 14%. So if the Bengals can get a win on Sunday, obviously their odds go back up. Now, only one team has ever started 0-4 and made the playoffs. That was the 1992 San Diego Chargers. If the Bengals start 0-4 with this schedule, because they had a weak schedule this year, and already, as I've been over, 2 of their losses have come to teams that picked in the top 3 last year. And this Sunday, they play the team that owned that number 1 overall pick. Of course, Carolina had traded that to Chicago, so Chicago got Caleb Williams. But the Panthers were the worst team in the league last year. That number 1 pick that the Bears had for Caleb Williams, they traded that away for Bryce Young. I ripped on Washington last week. You want to talk about an incompetent franchise. Carolina is the new Washington. What we saw with Washington and Dan Snyder, their former owner, where it was constantly a circus, that is what Carolina has lapped all the other bad franchises in the NFL into becoming the laughingstock of the league. So again, the Bengals have to figure this one out. I feel like I'm repeating so much of what I said last week. These should be cakewalks. These should be cakewalks for a team with the Bengals' talent. But as we saw last week and in week 1, we just don't know right now. But again, one team has started 0-4 and made the playoffs, the 92 Chargers. Let's hope to God that it doesn't get to that point. If it does get to that point, there's no point in really talking about the postseason. I mean, you can talk about whatever you want to. But we'll see. So Joe Burrow said this week that the playoffs are not on his mind, nor should they be. Whether you're 0-3 or 3-0, there's no point in thinking about the playoffs if you're a player right now. For us fans and people who commentate on the game and reporters, it's a fun thing to do, right? You want to know, hey, like if you're in the game, I'm no longer a sports reporter, but I was for a decade, and a big reason I love doing it is because I loved looking at the stats. I love looking at the numbers. I still do, and that's kind of what I did here with these. So Joe Burrow says the playoffs aren't on his mind, nor should they be, but for us, it's still fun to talk about. By the way, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, there has been one team to start the season 1-3 and go on to win the Super Bowl. That was the 2001 New England Patriots, and that's all I have to say about that. We'll move on from the playoff talk for now.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
I hope you can win a game too. Let's see if they can do it on Sunday when they go to Carolina. That would be nice. What else do we want to get in here too? I think the big story, I mean, it's not even a think at this point, the thing everyone is trying to figure out in Cincinnati, what the hell is going on with the defense? And there are some answers, but there are also some things that just don't really add up at this point. So let's get into that. That's our big story. That's our entree. That's our main course. And right now, it's not the tastiest one, right? So can this defense get better? Will it get better? How does it get better? There are a lot of questions, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know better than Lou Anarumo what to do with the players he has on this roster. But there are some things that from the outside you can look at and say this would make sense, right? So first of all, let's start with what's not a problem. Trey Hendrickson, back at practice on Friday afternoon. By the way, I'm recording this on a Friday afternoon. Hopefully you listen to it in the next 48 hours. Usually out on Friday mornings, but I've had a heck of a week, so I didn't quite get to it until now. So what's not a problem? Trey Hendrickson, been awesome. He was sick this week. He's back out there on the field. I'm sure he will be wonderful. That's not someone you're worried about. I heard a reporter say this week who covers the team, maybe they can get more from him. Yeah, maybe they can, and maybe the Bulls in 1997 could have got more from Michael Jordan, but I don't know that that was something that was necessary to talk about. So Trey Hendrickson's been great. Logan Wilson, outstanding. Jermaine Pratt, not as good as always. I mean, he's always kind of been a guy who's fluctuated a little bit, but I think the linebacking duo is fine. And Cam Taylor-Britt, for as frustrating as he's been this year with the talk in the locker room and getting burned on a couple of big plays, he's still a number one corner. He still would start at cornerback for every single team on the league, and he's still the number one cornerback for most of the teams in the league. So right there, those are not issues, right? At linebacker, not an issue. Your number one corner, not an issue. You have a true number one corner in Cam Taylor-Britt. Whether or not he's a top 5 or top 10 guy, you can argue. But he is a true number one corner, meaning he is certainly a top 15 guy. He would start on the majority of the teams in the league as a top corner. He would start at every team on the league at one of the two corner spots. And then the pass rush. I mean, Trey Hendrickson, probably a top 5 pass rusher. If you're listening to this podcast, you've probably seen all the graphics where it's like, oh, best pass rushers of the last 5 years. And it's always Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, two very well-known guys who get a lot of accolades. And then right there, not necessarily in this order, Trey Hendrickson is always up there with them. You've got a true number one corner. You've got a true number one pass rusher. So what else needs fixed? You have an excellent linebacking duo. Injuries, obviously a big problem. You're going to get Sheldon Rankins and B.J. Hill back, but they were there in week 1 when Ramondre Stevenson ran all over you. We will see what Lou Anarumo does because, look, I don't think he's going to sit on his hands and just hope things get better. He's going to be proactive. He's going to go out there. He has to get creative at this point to generate a pass rush, to generate something up front because Jay Tuafile and Zach Carter not really getting it done, and that's fine. They are depth guys. The Bengals would never anticipate a situation where those two guys would have to be your main interior defensive linemen for multiple games in a row, let alone who knows how long. Now, the good news is Rankins and B.J. Hill neither went to IR. B.J. Hill, it seems, more likely will be back first, possibly this week. That remains to be seen. Sheldon Rankins almost certainly will not play this week, but we'll keep an eye on that. I mean, here's my question. Do you find a way to get creative and get more of the talent on the field? Because we see Akeem Davis-Gaither out there making plays. It feels like he's probably one of the best 11 defenders you have on this team. Do you find a way to get him on the field? Do you find a way to get more creative, to give him more opportunities? He picked off Pat Mahomes. Seems to make plays. Can you get him out there? I'm not saying he replaces Pratt or Wilson, but can you find a way? Can you find a way to shuffle things around and get guys like him on the field? Jordan Battle was a bruiser last year. I don't know what he did this offseason to make the coaching staff mad. He's played one snap this year. Third-round pick last year, started at safety. Of course, had his ups and downs. He was a third-round rookie, but was a bruiser. Can you find a way to get him on the field for a team that cannot tackle? One of the meanest guys you have on defense, can he get out there and set the tone a little bit? We needed someone who's in that press room every day. What's going on with Jordan Battle? And probably it's been asked. I don't know. I know Von Bell. He's not going to start over Von Bell, and that's fine. But one snap through 3 games after starting most of last year and being pretty good for a rookie? I mean, he's got so much physicality. Get him out there to, send him on a blitz. Do what you got to do. Just, it seems like he's a guy, a lot of the things we're seeing, a lot of the softness and missed tackles, he is the opposite of that. Can he find a way to get on the field? You look at their draft picks from 2023, he was their 3rd round pick. So Myles Murphy, 28th overall in 2023, the defensive end, he's on IR. He should be back after this game. And he looked good down the stretch last year. Hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully he can play well because God knows they need all they can get on the defensive line right now. So you had Myles Murphy at 28. DJ Turner at number 60, who lost his number 2 cornerback job to Dax Hill somehow this offseason, and Jordan Battle at the 95th pick. So these are 3 second-year players who they spent their top 3 draft picks on, picks 28, 60, and 95 in 2023. 17 months ago, whatever it was, they spent their first 3 draft picks in the top 100 on defensive players. Those defensive players through 3 games in 2024 have combined to play 12 snaps. 12 snaps. So Murphy hasn't played any because he's been on IR. That one's understandable. DJ Turner's played 11. Jordan Battle's played 1. Now, I'm not saying they should be playing more, but what the Bengals should be doing when they're paying Joe Burrow $275 million, when Jamar Chase is going to get somewhere between $35 and $40 million, T. Higgins is getting a lot of money this year, Orlando Brown has a big contract, there's a lot of money out there that's going to have to be paid. You've got to hit on your defensive picks. So we can sit here all day and I can say Lou Anarumo has to be creative, and he does because the ingredients he's been given to cook with are not looking like they were the freshest in the world, right? It's not looking great right now. And then in 2022, your first 3 picks were also on defense. Dax Hill didn't work out at safety. He's an okay corner right now. I mean, he hasn't been awful. But the problem with Dax is he can't tackle. You got to be able to tackle. Like, it's one thing to be an awesome number 1 shutdown corner and not be good at tackling. To be an okay corner and not be able to tackle, that's an issue. In the second round, they get Cam Taylor-Britt. That's obviously wonderful. And in the third round, they get Zach Carter, who is, again, an okay depth piece. But that's a 2-year stretch where they've spent their first 6 picks on defensive players. I mean, they should, I would guess the goal of that was, hey, that's going to be more than half our starters. Come 2024, these are guys who on rookie contracts, not making a lot of money, can hold the fort down while Joe and Jamar lead us to a championship on offense. I mean, you got to have Myles Murphy pan out of that group. That is an ugly back-to-back draft if Myles Murphy does not become a legit defensive end in this league. But if you want to start looking at why aren't they playing well on defense right now, they just don't have the guys. Why do they not have the guys? Well, injuries, of course, yeah. But the draft picks there have not been great, or at least they don't look like it right now. Got to be better. And look, I can say all this and add one more big thing. You got to tackle. I mean, the Bengals have not, they kind of shorted up in Kansas City, and then I get Jaden Daniels is elusive. Well, guess what? You got Lamar Jackson coming up twice. You got Justin Fields coming up twice. Might want to figure out how to tackle the elusive quarterback because they're not going away. So, yep, Lou's going to have to get creative this week while Hill and Rankins get healthy. There's going to, there's a lot of things that need to get better, but that's right now, I called it at the top of the show, Band-Aids. You need to figure out a way to stop the bleeding until your big dog can get back in the middle, and we'll go from there. But you got to generate a pass rush in the NFL. If you want to sit there and, I can sit here and say that Dax Hill's been okay and that Cam Taylor-Britt needs to not get burnt and that Von Bell's not looking great and that Geno Stone, he's been fine, but it's tough to judge anyone in the secondary when the quarterback has as much time as they have. They got beat by power in week 1. They got beat by speed in week 3. I can handle week 2 with Mahomes. You lose by a point to Mahomes. Okay. In Kansas City. That I can get. But it's 2 different ways now. They got beat up in week 1. They got bullied in week 1. And then last week you got Jaden Daniels just like a gazelle out there doing whatever he wanted to. And then, I mean, he played great. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, you're at home in primetime. You're 0-2. You got to figure out a way to do something against him. This week, of course, they will get Andrew Gregory Dalton, well known in Cincinnati. So we'll see what he can do. He was awesome in Las Vegas last week against the Raiders, led the Panthers to their first win. How about this? The only two quarterbacks in the NFL through week 3 to throw for both 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game, that would be Andy Dalton and Joe Burrow. Only 2 guys to do it. They know how to build them in Cincinnati. Someone brought up the point, like, of course Andy Dalton goes out there and balls out. He spent like the majority of his career playing against the 2010 defenses in the AFC North. Like, he was going against those awesome defenses in Pittsburgh and Baltimore all the time. Of course, he's going to be able to figure out what the Raiders are doing. I mean, he can still sling it. We saw that. Reading what they're doing out in Vegas, not going to be difficult for a guy who was spending all that time battling Dick LeBeau and Rex Ryan. Although Rex wouldn't have probably been there by then. No, he was already in New York. You get the point, though. So, yeah, wish the best for Andy, just not this Sunday. And then, look, I sit here and gripe about the defense. The offense is the opposite. Everything looks good on offense. The offensive line, the one thing we worry about every year, is playing really well. They have been really solid, and I think they're going to get better. Trent Brown goes down with the, I can't even remember what it was. It's a knee injury, and he's done for the year. Amarius Mims stepping in. I don't know if he'll be better this week, but I think a month from now, Amarius Mims with 5 NFL games under his belt is a better option than Trent Brown based on the little bit we saw in the preseason. I know the preseason doesn't mean a ton, but Trent Brown didn't look great in the regular season. He was fine. He wasn't great. He was a good depth piece, but he was not the guy you wanted to be starting. And then Amarius Mims, I mean, he looks like he's got some fire, and he's earned the praise from Joe Burrow already. Bengals have some. I sit here and complain about the rookies on offense or on defense. The guys on offense are looking good. Mims looks good. We love the promise out of Jermaine Burton. Eric All, the tight end, looks really solid. A 4th-round guy. So the Bengals, 3 of their first 4 picks this year, 3 of the 4 rookies, the first ones they took, are guys on the offensive side of the ball, and all of them seem to have a legit role in this offense so far. That's great. That is fantastic. Defense, on the other hand, bit of an issue. So the Bengals right now averaging, the last 2 weeks, they've averaged 29 points a game in tough spots. I mean, Kansas City's defense is really solid, and then when your defense isn't forcing any turnovers or forcing the other team to punt to put up 33 is pretty solid as they did. And by the way, if Evan McPherson makes an extra point in a field goal, the Bengals are averaging 31 points the last 2 weeks. So 31 points, that wins you a lot of games in the NFL. They should be able to do that again. Carolina averaging a league worst, allowing a league worst 31.7 points per game. So the offense, they got right. They're right. They're in good shape. Hopefully they don't need to win in the shootout, but if they do, if somehow an hurricane battered Carolina against Andy Dalton, know him and love him, no Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson is questionable. If for whatever reason the Bengals have to get into a shootout with the Panthers, you got to feel good about it. Right now, it's week to week. For the NFL players, that's always the way it is. Right now, as a Bengals fan, you're just hoping to notch a win and move on to the next one and get some guys healthy and hopefully not lose any more in the process. So where we're at after less than a month of the NFL schedule. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm repeating a lot of what I said last week. Like, hey, this is pretty simple. Now, also what I said last week, and I think anyone who's paid attention probably knew this, Jaden Daniels was ready to pop, and the Bengals were primed to give a popping to, and he did just that, and that's how you lose a game 38-33 against a rookie quarterback. So, out of the jungle this week, let's exit the jungle into the less than friendly confines of the AFC North. The Cleveland Browns now sit at 1-2. They go to they go to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. And the Raiders, probably a little bit of a fired up team right now. They got beat by Carolina at home. They got lit up by Carolina at home. Antonio Pierce calling out some guys. Gardner Minshew over there, he kind of got called out. Maybe they'll make some changes. I don't know. But the good news is, now look, the Browns should win this game. But they've got, I mean, it kind of feels like already a sink or swim time for the Raiders. Like your first-year head coach is calling you guys out after 2-3 games. So what's the deal? Do you guys like Antonio Pierce? Are you going to show up for him and defend him? And is that going to work? Or are you going to say, hell with this guy. Let's go out there and put together a 4-13 season. So if the Raiders come out fired up, I think there's a chance, and we know how the Browns like to fiddle around. There's a chance Cleveland falls to 1-3 this week. The Ravens host the Bills on Sunday Night Football. That's another one where it's like, we forget. We talk about playoffs at the top of the show. The Ravens could easily be 1-3 as well after this week. I mean, the Bills playing as well as anyone right now. They just played on Monday night, so they're on a bit of a short week. But, yeah, they played that game against Jacksonville. I mean, they cruised in the second half. But at any rate, they've got to go to Baltimore. That's a short trip. I mean, Baltimore and Cleveland could easily both be 1-3 after this weekend, and hopefully the Bengals are there as well. And then there's the Pittsburgh Steelers allowing a league-best 8.7 points per game. Of course they are. Now, of course, that schedule's been very soft as well, but they go to Indianapolis, a desperate 1-2 Indy team. The one thing I love about the Steelers right now, and bear with me here, they're 3-0. Their fans are all pumped up. It's going to make it much sweeter when they inevitably fall on their faces, because it will happen. As I pull their schedule up here, I mean, yeah, they're 3-0. Yeah, they're allowing 9 points a game. They played Kirk Cousins. They played Bo Nix. And then I guess they did hold Los Angeles to 10. But we know the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers always they're right there as one of the teams that is always better on paper than they actually are. So the Chargers don't have any receivers either. I keep forgetting that. They traded away all their guys who were banged up to begin with. So Steelers, I mean, I just feel like the Steelers eventually, they got to fall on their face eventually. This is not sustainable in 2024. It is not sustainable to continue winning games by holding teams to 9 points per game. But I mean, they got Indy, they got Dallas, Pittsburgh and Dallas on a Sunday night coming up in a couple weeks. We've got the Steelers on Sunday Night Football, both the 6th and the 20th of October. So both at home, of course, against Dallas and Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. And then they're on Monday Night Football. They get back in October? In October, the Pittsburgh Steelers get 3 home games in primetime in a 4-week stretch. Boy, that's some friendly scheduling, is it not? I mean, I'm not saying it's intentional, but of all the teams to catch some luck, there's stats out there. I don't have them in front of me, but home teams in primetime perform better than home teams during the day, and you get 3 out of 4 games at home in primetime before going into your bye week. Boy, isn't that nice. Always seems to be. But hey, when you take care of business and you're 3-0, it's what happens. Good things come to those who, what's the saying? A real man makes his own luck. A real franchise making their own luck, I guess. But again, they'll fall on their face. Don't worry about it. My big bet this weekend, I finally got one right last week and got it right early. I said Jamar Chase, his longest reception would be more than 24.5 yards. Of course, that opening touchdown on the opening drive was 41 yards. So I won some money out of the gate. It was only $20, but hey, I'll take $20. This week, the one I like, I said over last week, will go under this week. ESPN Bet has Joe Burrow's over-under a total pass attempts at 35.5. So ESPN Bet is saying, is he going to throw less than that or more than that? I'm going to say he is going to throw less than that. It's going to be wet. The Bengals want to get a lead. They want to control the ball. They want to keep that offense keep the Panthers offense off the field, in turn keeping their defense off the field. Because that's just where they're at right now. I think they're probably in the same boat of, hey, let's get this one, get some guys back, and continue rolling. I think they're going to pound the rock. I think they're going to come out and try to get a lead, hang on to it. I don't think they're trying to get any style points like last time they went to Carolina when Joe Mixon scored 5 touchdowns. I like Joe Burrow to throw less than 35.5 pass attempts. Maybe he hits 30, maybe he hits 32, 33. I think the Bengals in soggy conditions against a bad defense, they're going to try to run the ball a lot. They're going to try to get a big lead, and they're going to try to keep that ball away from the other team, in turn keeping their defense off the field. My prediction this week, so that's my bet, less than 35.5 pass attempts for Joseph Lee Burrow. My prediction this week, so I'm 0-3 on my predictions. I've taken the Bengals to win every week. This week, I'm going to say Carolina wins 50-0. I'll do my part to help turn the tide, and that is that. Out of the jungle, not out of the jungle, I already did out of the jungle. One for the road, we call this one, would be, just look, I'm going to pay a little homage to Andy Dalton here. Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic tweeting, no Sheldon Rankins this week and B.J. Hill. They will monitor, but it's doubtful, according to Zach Taylor. So it looks like, again, neither of those guys will play on Sunday. Shout out to Paul and all the reporters doing their best down there in Cincinnati and doing a hell of a job as well. At any rate, one for the road. Let's pay some homage to Andy Dalton. So Andy Dalton needs 25 more touchdown passes. This is a stat that blew me away. He needs 25 more touchdown passes in the NFL to eclipse Joe Montana. Joe Montana, who, when Andy Dalton was drafted in 2011, a lot of people still considered Joe Montana the GOAT. Of course, Tom Brady's took that title, and there's, I would argue, even some other guys. But for his era, Joe Montana was certainly the GOAT. Andy Dalton needs 25 more touchdown passes to eclipse the great Joe Montana on the all-time NFL TD list. Imagine telling someone when the Bengals drafted Andy Dalton in 2011 that he, in his NFL career, would throw more touchdown passes than Joe Montana. However, he would never win a playoff game. Wouldn't that just be baffling to understand? Isn't the NFL funny that way? That Andy Dalton very possibly could throw more touchdown passes than Joe Montana. He's already eclipsed Boomer Esiason, who you can see his jersey hanging up here behind me. That's just a wild one. What an odd career for a very talented guy and an A-plus human being who's made a lot of money and has done a lot of good with that money. But just thought that was interesting. If you would have went back and told Bengals fans in 2011, oh, this guy you took at a TCU in the second round, yeah, he'll throw more touchdown passes than Joe Montana. I think a lot of people would have thought, oh, he's going to lead us somewhere. He'll get a few playoff wins if he's that good. And he was really good at times. But the Bengals obviously, at the right time, go in a different direction with Joe Burrow, and they will meet this Sunday in Carolina, and the Bengals will need to get back on track. Kind of funny. I mean, not funny at all, but Andy Dalton could, in a sense, knock the Bengals out of the playoffs. You can't make the playoffs in September, but you can get knocked out of the playoffs in September, and if they fall to 0-4, going to be a tough climb uphill. So, again, I'm not going to sit here and do playoff stats and numbers and all that every week, but that's kind of where, the Bengals are just trying to not sink right now, right? Trying to not drown in the ocean. And to do that, they need just one floaty to hold on to, and that's what a win would be right now. So hopefully they can make that happen on Sunday in Carolina. If not, we will all light ourselves on fire and go watch some whatever other sport is available this time of year. So that's that. This podcast is called In the Jungle, a podcast mostly about the Cincinnati Bengals. If you like it, tell another Bengals friend about it. Give it a rating on Spotify. Subscribe to it. Go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ In the Jungle pod. If you like it, that goes a long way to help me out in promoting this bad boy. So my name is Matt Edwards. You can find me on the platform formerly known as Twitter. I am at Matt Edwards on there. Having a lot of fun. If you want to chime in, throw me a line. I'll read it on the show. I don't know that anyone listens this long because no one has yet. But we'll get into that. And chime in, man. Love doing it. Having fun. Let's see the Bengals get a win this Sunday. Turn this thing around. And then Baltimore comes to town after that. So 1 week at a time. We'll get there. I'm Matt Edwards. Appreciate everyone tuning in. You have been listening to In the Jungle.